The baby on Aaron Sanchez's doorstep was still breathing barely, blood-speckled, screaming, abandoned in a storm that could have killed her. But it was the note that stopped his heart. Protect her from your brother. Aaron had murdered men for less than disrespect. He'd built an empire on fear and broken bones. But the DNA results glowing on his phone told him this wasn't a threat, it was a reckoning. The baby was his. The woman he'd destroyed was gone. And his brother was hunting them both. The storm hammered against Aaron's penthouse windows like fists demanding entry. He stood in the doorway, rain-soaked and exhausted from what his men politely called a business meeting. Though the blood under his fingernails told a different story, the city sprawled below him, a kingdom he'd conquered through violence and strategy. And tonight he'd reminded 3 traitors exactly who wore the crown. Then he saw it. The bundle on his doorstep, barely visible in the shadows. Aaron's hand moved to his gun before his brain caught up. But this wasn't an ambush. It was something worse, something small, helpless, and screaming with the kind of rage that reminded him disturbingly of himself. He knelt slowly, his body protesting from the earlier fight. The blanket was torn, soaked through, with dark stains that made his stomach clench. Blood. Not much, but enough to tell him someone had fought to keep this package safe. His hands that had strangled grown men without hesitation, trembled as he lifted the fabric. A baby. Maybe 3 months old, face red from crying, tiny fists punching at the air like she was already learning to fight back. And then he saw the note, pinned to her blanket with a safety pin, the paper rain-smudged but unmistakable. Protect her from your brother. Aaron's world tilted sideways. He had enemies, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, but only one brother. Adrien. The name landed in his chest like a bullet. But whose child was this? Some kind of sick message? A trap? He started to pull out his phone to call Miguel, his second in command, when the baby stopped screaming. I stopped. Her dark eyes locked onto his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. The text was short, brutal. DNA results attached. You're welcome. A friend. Aaron's hands shook as he opened the attachment, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. The document loaded slowly. Each second an eternity. Paternity test results. Match probability, 99.97%. Subject, Pearl Sanchez. Mother, Tiffany Hayes. The name hit him like a gunshot to the chest. Tiffany, 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days since he'd last seen her. Since he'd pushed her away with words designed to cut deep enough that she'd never come back. You're not worth the complication, he'd said, watching something die in her eyes. It was the only way to keep her safe from his world, from the violence that followed him like a shadow. She'd never told him she was pregnant. She'd never told him he had a daughter. And now someone his brother, if the note was right, wanted this baby dead badly enough to hurt Tiffany. Maybe badly enough to kill her. Aaron looked down at Pearl, this tiny, impossible thing that was somehow his, and felt something crack open inside his chest. Something terrifying and unfamiliar that he'd spent 34 years learning to kill. Fear. Not for himself, he'd stared down death too many times to count, but for her. For this helpless, fragile creature who'd stopped crying the moment she saw his face, like she recognized him, like she knew he was supposed to protect her. Your mother, he whispered, his voice rough. Where is your mother, baby girl? Pearl just stared at him with those knowing dark eyes, and Aaron realized with crushing certainty that she couldn't tell him, that Tiffany might already be dead, that his daughter might be an orphan, and it was his fault for pushing away the only woman who'd ever made him want to be something other than a monster. The storm raged on, but Aaron barely heard it. He was already making calls, barking orders, his empire mobilizing in the space of minutes. Find Tiffany Hayes. Last known address. Credit cards. Phone records. Security footage. Everything. But even as his men scattered across the city, Aaron knew the truth. Settling like ice in his gut, his brother had gotten there first. And Adrien never left survivors. He pulled Pearl closer, this tiny heartbeat against his chest, and made a promise that would cost him everything. I'll find her. I'll find your mother. And I'll burn down anyone who tries to hurt you, even if it's my own blood. Outside, Chicago glittered with 1,000 lights, each one hiding 1,000 secrets. Aaron had built his empire on finding those secrets, on exploiting them, on turning them into weapons. Now he had one of his own. And it was 8 pounds. Screaming again, and smelled like she needed a diaper change. How the hell? Aaron muttered, staring at the baby in bewilderment. Do you change a diaper? Pearl shrieked louder, unimpressed with her father's credentials as a feared mafia boss. For the first time in 20 years, Adrien Sanchez had absolutely no idea what to do, and the clock was already ticking on how long it would take his brother to try again. Adrien hadn't spoken to his brother in 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days. Not since Adrien showed up at his office with that snake oil smile and demanded Adrien's support for his ascension in the Ortega cartel. Adrien had always been ambitious, charming, strategic, the kind of man who could convince you to hand over your empire while thanking him for the privilege. But ambition without loyalty was just treason in expensive suits. "You're choosing strangers over blood," Adrien had said that night, his voice dripping with manufactured hurt. "That's not how family works, hermano. Family doesn't ask me to compromise my organization for your ego," Adrien had replied, and Adrien's mask had slipped just enough to show the rage underneath. They hadn't spoken since. Now Adrien stood in his office at 4 a.m., Pearl finally asleep in a bassinet Miguel had somehow procured within an hour, while his intelligence team pulled everything they had on Adrien's recent activities. The pattern that emerged made Adrien's blood run cold. 6 people, 6 witnesses to Victor Romano's heart attack 3 years ago. All of them had met unfortunate ends in the past 18 months. Car accidents, house fires. One poor soul had apparently fallen off his own balcony. The kind of convenient tragedies that didn't raise eyebrows unless you knew what to look for. Victor Romano had been their former boss, a brutal man who'd ruled the syndicate with an iron fist until his heart gave out at 52. Except Victor had been a health fanatic who ran marathons and ate like a monk. His sudden demise had always felt wrong, but without proof, suspicion meant nothing in their world. Adrien had been Victor's protege, his golden boy, the heir apparent who'd somehow ended up in a rival organization within months of Victor's passing. "He's building something," Miguel said quietly, studying the surveillance photos spread across Adrien's desk, taking out anyone who could connect him to Victor's departure, positioning himself to merge the territories. "And Pearl is evidence," Adrien finished, the pieces clicking into place. "Tiffany must have seen something, audited something. She always was too smart for her own good." His phone buzzed. Another report. Tiffany's apartment had been professionally cleaned. No blood, no signs of struggle, at least not anymore. Someone had sanitized the scene within hours of Adrien's men arriving. Someone with resources and connections. Someone like Adrien. Pearl chose that moment to wake up screaming, and Adrien's battle-hardened nerves frayed instantly. He'd faced down armed rivals without breaking a sweat. But this tiny human reduced him to near panic with just her lungs. "Why?" he demanded, scooping her up awkwardly. "Why are you screaming? You were just asleep." Pearl's response was to scream louder, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. "Is she dying?" Adrien asked Miguel desperately. "Do babies just do this?" Miguel, a father of 4, barely suppressed his grin. "Check her diaper, boss. I just changed it 20 minutes ago. Welcome to fatherhood." By 4:30 a.m., Adrien was Googling, "Why won't baby stop crying?" with one hand, while attempting to warm a bottle with the other. Pearl had somehow managed to spit up on his third shirt of the night. The penthouse, normally pristine and intimidating, now looked like a disaster zone of baby supplies, discarded diapers, and Adrien's dignity. "How?" Adrien muttered, covered in formula and exhaustion. "Do people do this on purpose?" Miguel found him at 5 a.m., slumped against the kitchen counter with Pearl finally quiet on his shoulder. One tiny hand fisted in Adrien's shirt like she was claiming ownership. "Sir," Miguel said, fighting back laughter, "you have formula in your hair. Tell me you found Tiffany." Miguel's smile faded. "No trace. It's like she vanished. But we found something else." He held up his phone, showing security footage from a warehouse across town. Adrien, clear as day, meeting with 3 men Adrien recognized as Victor's former inner circle. "He's making his move," Adrien said quietly. "And we're next on his list." Pearl yawned against his neck, completely unconcerned with the fact that her uncle wanted her eliminated, and her mother had disappeared into the Chicago night. Adrien looked down at his daughter, this impossible, fragile thing that had turned his carefully constructed world into chaos in less than 12 hours, and made a decision. "Get the team together," he told Miguel. "If Adrien wants a war, we'll give him one. But first," he glanced at Pearl, who was drooling on his collar, "someone teach me how to work a baby monitor, and maybe how to survive on 3 hours of sleep." "That second one," Miguel said sympathetically, "nobody's figured out yet." "Where are you watching from?" Drop your city or country in the comments below, we'd love to know. Please hit that subscribe button too. Aaron's tech specialist, a wiry kid named Jonah who could hack the Pentagon before breakfast, finally cracked Tiffany's cloud storage at dawn. Pearl was mercifully asleep in her bassinet, giving Aaron his first quiet moment in 24 hours to focus on finding the woman who disappeared with his heart 2 years ago. Got it, Jonah said, fingers flying across 3 keyboards simultaneously. She buried it deep. Military-grade encryption, 3 layers of weight. His face went pale. Boss, you need to see this. The hidden folder bloomed across the screen. Hundreds of files, each one labeled with dates, names, transactions. Surveillance footage from outside Victor Romano's estate. Financial records showing money moving through shell corporations. Wire transfers, offshore accounts. And right there, glowing like a beacon, a video file marked V.R. Proof. Aaron's hand moved toward the mouse, his pulse hammering. This was it. Whatever Tiffany had found. Whatever had put her in Adrien's crosshairs. Don't open it yet, Jonah warned. Let me check for... Aaron clicked. The screen went black. Then red text scrolled across. Unauthorized access detected. File will self-destruct in 10, 9, 8. No. Jonah's fingers blurred. She built in a dead man's switch, I can't stop it. The files vanished one by one, erasing themselves with surgical precision. Financial records, gone. Surveillance footage, deleted. The video file collapsed into pixels and disappeared into the digital void. In 30 seconds, 2 years of evidence evaporated like it had never existed. Backup? Aaron's voice was dangerously quiet. Jonah shook his head miserably. She designed it to wipe everything simultaneously. Cloud, local copies, mirrors. It's gone, boss. All of it. Aaron's fist slammed into the desk hard enough to crack the wood. Pearl startled awake and began crying, and for a moment Aaron wanted to join her. Tiffany had spent months, maybe years, gathering evidence against Adrien, and now it was ash. She'd protected it, even from him. 2 hours later, Miguel appeared in the doorway looking grim. Package for you, sir. Hand delivered by a street kid. He said, and I quote, "A scared lady gave me $500 to bring this to the scary penthouse." The envelope was manila, unremarkable except for the way Aaron's hands shook opening it. Inside, a single photograph fell onto his desk. Tiffany. She was alive, that was the first relief. A flood of warmth that lasted exactly 2 seconds before Aaron registered the rest. Bruised. Split lip. Left eye swollen nearly shut. Her hands, visible at the bottom of the frame, were zip-tied together. She held today's newspaper. The Chicago Tribune's headline clearly visible, Sanchez Empire under investigation. And there, tucked behind the photo, a note in Tiffany's precise handwriting. Aaron recognized it instantly. She used to leave him notes on his pillow, little observations about his terrible coffee or the way he scowled in his sleep. Now her words were shaky, desperate. I have what Adrien needs buried. If you want me alive, find me before he does. I'm sorry about Pearl. I'm sorry about everything. T. Aaron read it 3 times, his tactical mind sorting through implications. Tiffany hadn't just witnessed Adrien's crimes. She'd been actively investigating him, building a case like the forensic accountant she was. She'd turned herself into a weapon, and Adrien knew it. She's bait, Miguel said quietly. He's using her to draw you out. I know. Aaron studied the photo, cataloging every detail. The lighting suggested a basement, industrial pipes visible in the background. Tiffany's clothes were the same ones she'd worn in her last Instagram post 3 days ago, which meant she'd been captive at least that long. His phone buzzed. Unknown number? A text? Just 2 words. Clocks ticking. Then a second message. A video file. Aaron's stomach dropped even before he pressed play. The footage was grainy, shot from a security camera. Tiffany, stumbling through what looked like an abandoned warehouse, clearly running from something, or someone. She glanced back, terror stark on her face, and for just a moment, the camera caught her pursuer, Adrien, smiling like he was enjoying the hunt. The video cut off. Pearl whimpered from her bassinet, and Aaron realized his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Tiffany wasn't just a victim. She was a threat to Adrien's entire operation. She had evidence, or knew where it was hidden, and Adrien would tear her apart piece by piece until she gave it up. Find her, Aaron said, his voice like gravel. I don't care what it costs. Tap every informant, burn every favor we're owed. Find out where Adrien is keeping her." Miguel nodded and left. Aaron picked up the photograph again, tracing Tiffany's bruised face with one finger. "Hold on," he whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Behind him, Pearl started crying again, hungry and oblivious to the fact that her mother was running out of time and her father was planning a war that might consume them all. The safe house sat 40 miles outside Chicago, buried in woods so thick even satellites had trouble finding it. Aaron had bought the property 5 years ago under 3 different shell companies, a fortress disguised as a hunting lodge, complete with reinforced walls, military-grade surveillance, and enough ammunition to supply a small army. He'd never imagined he'd be using it to protect a 3-month-old who couldn't even hold her own head up. Lucia arrived at dawn, a compact woman in her 50s with steady hands and the kind of eyes that had seen too much to be shocked by anything. She'd been a cartel nurse back in Sinaloa, before retiring to a quiet life in the suburbs. Miguel had convinced her to come out of retirement with a duffel bag of cash and the promise that Aaron Sanchez didn't forget favors. "Let me see her," Lucia said, not bothering with pleasantries. Aaron handed Pearl over, like she was made of glass. The baby had been screaming for 20 minutes straight, and Aaron had exhausted every trick Google had taught him. Lucia took one look, made a dismissive sound, and adjusted how Aaron had wrapped the blanket. Pearl stopped crying instantly. "You were suffocating her," Lucia said. "Too tight. Babies need to breathe, Mr. Sanchez. I watched a video. Videos lie. Experience doesn't." She settled into the rocking chair by the window, cradling Pearl with the kind of natural grace that made Aaron feel like a complete amateur. Within minutes, Pearl's eyes were drooping, her tiny fists unclenching. Aaron stood frozen in the doorway, watching Lucia hum something soft and melodic. The late morning sun caught the dust motes in the air, turning them golden. Pearl's breathing evened out, peaceful and trusting in a way that made Aaron's chest ache. He'd never seen anything so quiet in his entire life. His world was sirens and gunfire, screaming and blood, the constant hum of violence waiting to explode. But this, a woman rocking a baby in the sunlight, felt like something from a dream he'd never known he wanted. "She's beautiful," Lucia whispered. "What's her mother's name?" "Tiffany," Aaron said, the word catching in his throat. "She's missing." Lucia's eyes met his, understanding more than he'd said. "Then we keep this one safe until you find her." The peace lasted exactly 4 hours. The perimeter alarm went off at 2 p.m., silent but urgent on Aaron's phone. 4 heat signatures approaching from the north, moving with tactical precision. Professional. Armed. "Lucia, take Pearl to the basement," Aaron barked, already moving. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." The firefight erupted before Lucia cleared the hallway. Windows shattered. Bullets punched through the reinforced walls like they were cardboard. Aaron's guards returned fire, their muzzle flashes strobing in the afternoon light. 3 of Adrien's men went down in the first 30 seconds. Aaron's security team was good, well-trained, loyal, but one got through. Aaron saw him slip past the perimeter, heading straight for the side entrance. The entrance closest to where Lucia had gone with Pearl, his daughter. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously. Aaron sprinted across the compound, his lungs burning, his vision tunneling. The assassin was already at the nursery door, gun raised, preparing to breach. Aaron didn't think. He just threw himself forward, putting his body between the door and the threat. The bullet hit him in the left shoulder, spinning him sideways. White-hot agony exploded through his chest, but his gun was already up, already firing. 3 shots, center mass. The assassin crumpled. Aaron's legs gave out. He slumped against the nursery door, blood soaking through his shirt, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind the door, he could hear Pearl crying, frightened but alive. Safe. The door cracked open. Lucia's face appeared, pale but composed. Then Pearl's tiny hand reached through the gap, fingers stretching toward him like she knew he was hurt, like she was trying to help. Her hand found his, wrapping around his index finger with that impossible baby strength that felt like both nothing and everything. And Aaron broke. Not from the pain he'd been shot before, stabbed, beaten within an inch of his life. Physical pain was just information, data to be processed and ignored. But this crushing, overwhelming weight of responsibility and love and terror, that this precious, helpless thing depended on him, that she trusted him, that she could be taken away in a heartbeat. He wept. Great, shuddering sobs that tore out of his chest like shrapnel, tears mixing with blood on the hardwood floor. "I've got you," he whispered to Pearl, Or maybe to himself. "I've got you, baby girl. I promise." But as Miguel's voice crackled over the radio announcing the perimeter was secure, Aaron knew the truth. Adrien had found them, and next time, he'd bring more men. The war had officially begun. The encrypted message arrived at midnight, burning through Aaron's secure phone like acid. "I know where Tiffany is hiding. Meet me alone, or I tell Adrien. Street Augustine's Church. Tomorrow, noon." Aaron stared at the coordinates. A church. Someone had a sense of irony. Or maybe they just understood that even monsters hesitated to spill blood on sacred ground. His shoulder still throbbed from the bullet wound. Lucia had patched him up with the efficiency of someone who'd done field surgery in worse conditions, but the pain kept him sharp. "It's a trap," Miguel said flatly. "Obviously." Aaron checked his gun, sliding it into the shoulder holster. "But if there's even a chance they know where Tiffany is, you walk in there alone and Adrien puts you down. Then make sure someone's watching my back from a distance, someone Adrien won't see coming." Street Augustine's was a crumbling Gothic structure in a neighborhood the city had forgotten decades ago. Stained glass windows depicted saints with judgmental eyes. Aaron pushed through the heavy doors at exactly noon, his hand never far from his weapon. She was waiting in the front pew. Camila Ortega, Adrien's former right hand, a woman whose reputation for strategic brutality had made her a legend in the cartel world. She looked smaller than Aaron remembered, her expensive suit unable to hide the exhaustion in her shoulders. "Camila." Aaron stayed near the door, escape routes already mapped. "Didn't expect you to develop a conscience." "Conscience?" She laughed bitterly. "I developed a survival instinct. Adrien's gone mad, Aaron. What he's planning, it's going to destroy everything. Start talking. You have 5 minutes before I decide you're wasting my time." Camila's hands trembled as she pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the pew. Security footage flickered to life, grainy, date stamped 3 years ago. Victor Romano's study, and Adrien, young and ambitious, slipping something into Victor's evening whiskey. "Digitalis," Camila said quietly. "Mimics a heart attack perfectly." Adrien had been planning it for months. He needed Victor gone, needed the power vacuum. But he also needed someone to blame. Aaron's blood ran cold. "He was setting up my organization. A war between your family and the Romanos would have eliminated both. Adrien would have stepped in as the peacemaker, consolidated power, taken control of everything." She swiped to the next video, but someone saw him. "You're Tiffany." The footage showed a woman, Tiffany, younger, terrified, visible for just 3 seconds in the doorway's reflection. She'd been there auditing Victor's books. She'd seen everything. "Adrien's been hunting her ever since," Camila continued. "But she's smart. She went underground, gathered evidence, built insurance. Now she's the only person alive who can prove what he did." "Where is she?" Camila pulled out a piece of paper, coordinates scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Abandoned steel mill, East Industrial District." "But Aaron." Her eyes hardened. "I didn't come here out of kindness. I want Adrien gone. Permanently. He's too dangerous, too unstable. You end him, or this city drowns in blood. I'm not your executioner. You're a father now. You think Adrien stops at Tiffany?" "At Pearl." Camila stood, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He already sent 1 team. He'll send 10 more, 100. He won't stop until everyone who threatens him is erased. So you either end this, or—" "I'll find Tiffany," Aaron interrupted. "What happens after is between me and my brother." Back at the safe house, Aaron found chaos. Pearl was screaming not her usual hungry cry, but something desperate and wrong. Lucia met him at the door, worry creasing her face. "Fever. 102. I've done everything, but she won't settle." Aaron took Pearl, and his heart lurched. She was burning up, her tiny body rigid with distress. He'd faced down armed cartels without flinching, but his daughter's suffering unmade him completely. "Come on, baby girl," he whispered, pacing the nursery. "Come on." Nothing worked. Rocking, shushing, singing. Pearl just screamed harder, her face red and tear-streaked. Aaron felt helpless in a way no amount of firepower could fix. Then, unbidden, a melody surfaced from somewhere deep in his memory. His mother's voice, before the drinking, before his father's fists, before everything turned dark, a lullaby in Spanish, half-forgotten words about the moon and stars and sleeping children. Aaron's voice cracked as he sang, holding Pearl against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "Duérmete mi niña, duérmete mi sol." Pearl's screams softened, hiccuped, quiet. He kept singing, swaying in the dim nursery light, tears streaming down his face. Not from fear or pain, but from the crushing realization that this tiny, fragile human needed him. Not his money, not his power, not his capacity for violence. Just him, just his voice in the darkness, promising safety he didn't know how to guarantee. Pearl's breathing evened. Her fever-hot cheek pressed against his neck. She slept. And Aaron understood. Being needed was infinitely more terrifying than being feared, because fear you could control. Need made you vulnerable, made you human, made you willing to burn down the world. The abandoned steel mill rose from the industrial wasteland like a corpse rusted, gutted, forgotten by everyone except those who needed to disappear. Aaron approached on foot, leaving Miguel and 2 guards a quarter-mile back with strict orders. If he didn't signal within 20 minutes, they storm in. He found her on the 3rd floor, tucked behind overturned machinery with a clear sightline to every entrance. The gun in her hands was steady, trained directly at his chest before she recognized him. Then her face crumpled, and Aaron saw what 3 years in terror had done to the woman he'd loved. Tiffany looked like she'd been through a war, malnourished, her clothes hanging off a frame that had lost too much weight. Dark circles carved hollows under her eyes. Fresh bruises painted her jaw purple-black. But her eyes, God, her eyes still burned with that fierce intelligence that had captivated him from the start. "You," she breathed, the gun lowering. Then rage replaced shock. "You son of a... How dare you show up now? How dare you?" "Tiffany. 2 years, Aaron. 2 years I raised our daughter alone because you told me I wasn't worth the complication." She was on her feet, advancing on him like she might actually shoot him after all. "Do you have any idea what that was like? Finding out I was pregnant the week after you ripped my heart out? You never told me." Aaron's voice cracked. "You never said, Pearl. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That I was carrying the child of a man who threw me away like garbage?" Tears streamed down her face. "I was trying to protect her from your world, from the violence, from everything you represent. I was building us a life where she could be safe and normal, and then Adrien happened." Tiffany's rage deflated into exhaustion. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she sat with her knees pulled to her chest. "Yeah, then Adrien happened." Aaron knelt beside her, maintaining distance. "Tell me." The story spilled out in fragments. Tiffany had been doing freelance forensic accounting, trying to make ends meet with a newborn. A routine audit of Victor Romano's estate finances. She'd been working late, heard voices, seen Adrien slip something into Victor's drink, watched the old man collapse 20 minutes later, recorded everything on her phone. "I should have gone to the police," she whispered, "but I knew what happens to people who cross your world. So I gathered evidence instead, built a case, thought maybe I could use it to protect myself, protect Pearl." She laughed bitterly. "Stupid. Adrien found out I existed 3 months ago. He's been hunting me ever since. The evidence. Encrypted drives. Multiple backups. Video of Adrien ending Victor. Audio recordings of his co-conspirators confessing. Financial records showing he embezzled $17 million from the syndicate." She met Aaron's eyes. "I've got everything. That's why he wants me gone so badly." Aaron's hands trembled as he reached out, fingering the bruise on her jaw. "He did this? His men. 2 days ago. I barely escaped." She caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. "I left Pearl with you because you're the only person in this city powerful enough to keep her safe. Even if you didn't know she existed. Even if you hate me." "Hate you?" Aaron's voice broke. "Tiffany, I never stopped. I pushed you away to protect you. I thought if you were far from me, if you hated me, you'd be safe from my enemies, from the violence. I never wanted." He pulled her close, carefully mindful of her injuries. "I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry." She was crying into his shoulder, and he was crying too. 2 years of grief and regret and love pouring out in the dusty darkness. When she lifted her face, her lips found his desperate, raw tasting of salt and blood and everything they'd lost. The kiss deepened, urgent and claiming. Aaron's hands cupped her face, gentle despite the fire between them. "I'll protect you both," he whispered against her mouth. "I won't lose you again. I swear on everything." The explosion came from below. The building shuddered. Flames erupted from the ground floor, orange and hungry. Through the broken windows, Aaron saw them 6 vehicles, Adrien's men pouring out like ants. "They followed you." Tiffany grabbed her backpack. "No, they were already here, waiting." Aaron pulled his gun, already calculating angles, exits, survival probability. North stairwell. Move! They ran through smoke and fire. Aaron's body positioned between Tiffany and any threat. Bullets punched through rusted metal. The building groaned, structural supports failing. They hit the ground floor as the third floor collapsed behind them, a wall of debris and flame. Miguel's SUV screamed around the corner, doors already open. Aaron shoved Tiffany inside and dove after her as bullets spiderwebbed the windows. Behind them, the steel mill became an inferno, collapsing in on itself like Adrien's patience had finally run out. Aaron pulled Tiffany against him, checking for new injuries, his heart hammering. She was alive. Pearl was safe. They'd made it. But Adrien knew they were together now, and that made them both targets. "Where's my daughter?" Tiffany asked, her voice small and broken. Aaron kissed her forehead, waiting for her mother to come home. The safe house door opened, and Tiffany froze in the entryway. Lucia stood in the living room, holding Pearl clean, fed, wearing a tiny onesie covered in ducks that Aaron had panic bought online at 3 a.m. The baby looked up, and something in her infant brain recognized the woman who'd carried her for 9 months. Pearl made a sound half cry, half relief, and reached out her tiny hands. Tiffany's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Lucia quickly crossed the room, placing Pearl in her mother's arms, and Tiffany clutched her daughter like she was the only real thing in the universe. "I'm sorry," Tiffany gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy's here now." Aaron stood in the doorway, watching his family reunite, and felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked tight since childhood. This was what people fought for, not territory or power or respect. This moment, right here, where love was so fierce it hurt. Miguel appeared at his shoulder, his expression grim enough to shatter the moment. "Boss, we need to talk. Now." In Aaron's office, Miguel pulled up a video on his tablet. Adrien's face filled the screen, all charm and venom. Behind him, bound to a chair with a bag over his head, was a man Aaron recognized by build alone, Bennett, his most loyal lieutenant, the man who'd taken a bullet for him in Detroit, who'd been at his side for 15 years. "Hello, brother." Adrien's voice dripped false warmth. "I have something of yours. Well, someone. Bennett, good man, loyal, but he made the mistake of choosing the wrong Sanchez." Adrien pulled the bag off Bennett's head. His face was a mess of bruises, one eye swollen shut. "Here's the deal. You have 24 hours to deliver Tiffany Hayes and that bastard child to the old Romano estate. Do that, and Bennett lives. Refuse." Adrien pressed a gun to Bennett's temple. "Well, you understand consequences." The video cut, replaced by a wider broadcast Adrien addressing every syndicate family in Chicago. "My brother has chosen a traitor over blood. He's protecting the woman who's been gathering evidence to destroy us all. He's weak, sentimental, unfit to lead, so I'm offering you a choice. Follow me into a new era of strength, or die with him in the old one." The screen went dark. Aaron's hands clenched into fists. Bennett had a wife, 3 kids. He'd served faithfully for 15 years without question, and now Adrien was going to execute him publicly to prove a point. "What do we do?" Miguel asked quietly. Behind them, Tiffany appeared in the doorway, Pearl asleep on her shoulder. She'd heard everything. "Run," she said, her voice desperate. "Aaron, please, take Pearl and run. We can disappear new identities, new country, new life. Let Adrien have the empire. It's not worth—" "He'll never stop hunting us," Aaron interrupted. "You know that. Adrien doesn't want the empire, he wants to erase anyone who threatens him. We run, he follows. He'll chase us across the world until we're gone. Then what?" Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. "You trade us for Bennett? Sacrifice your daughter to save your lieutenant?" The words hung in the air like poison. Aaron looked at Pearl, sleeping peacefully against her mother's chest, completely unaware that her uncle had put a 24-hour deadline on her life. Then he looked at the frozen image of Bennett on the screen, loyal, beaten, waiting to die. An impossible choice. His family or his man. Love or loyalty. Everything he'd built or everything he'd discovered. "Neither," Aaron said finally. "I'm calling a summit." Miguel's eyes widened. "Boss, all the families. Neutral ground. Tomorrow night. We settle this the old way in front of witnesses, under the old rules." Aaron's voice was cold steel. Adrien wants to expose me as weak? Fine. Let him do it publicly. Let him face me in front of everyone. It's suicide, Miguel protested. He'll have 50 men there. It's a trap. Everything's a trap. Aaron turned to Tiffany, taking her hand. I'm not choosing between you and the Empire. I'm burning the Empire down and building something new. Something that doesn't cost me everything I love. Aaron. He kissed her, cutting off her protest. I spent 2 years believing I had to be alone to keep you safe. I was wrong. We end this together, or we don't end it at all. That night, Aaron made calls, invitations to every major family. A summit at the Vanguard Hotel, neutral ground, old rules, winner takes everything. He recorded a message for Pearl just in case, told her about her mother's courage, about choosing love over fear, about being better than the violence that raised him. Then he held Tiffany as she cried, memorizing the feel of her against him, the sound of Pearl's breathing from the bassinet nearby. If this goes wrong, she started. It won't. But if it does, Aaron pulled back, looking into her eyes. Then you take Pearl and run. Miguel knows the routes, the accounts, everything. You disappear and you never look back. I can't lose you again. You won't. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Because I'm coming back. To both of you, I promise. But as dawn broke over the safe house, Aaron knew the truth. Some promises were made to be broken, and some wars could only end one way. The Vanguard Hotel had witnessed 50 years of syndicate history deals brokered, alliances forged, and more than a few bodies carried out through the service entrance. It stood in downtown Chicago like a monument to elegant brutality, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers hiding the blood in its foundations. Neutral ground, protected by ancient agreements that even the most violent families respected. Mostly, Aaron spent the day before the summit turning it into a battlefield. Miguel coordinated the logistics with military precision. 4 operatives disguised as hotel staff, positioned at key choke points. 2 snipers on neighboring rooftops insurance Adrien wouldn't expect. Tech specialist Jonah worked with the hotel's ancient AV system, preparing to hijack every screen in the ballroom at Aaron's signal. Camila confirmed her people would be there, ready to turn on Adrien the moment he showed weakness. It's still suicide, Miguel said for the 100th time, checking weapon placements on the building schematic. Then make sure my funeral's nice, Aaron replied, not looking up from Tiffany's encrypted drives. The evidence was damning: 3 years of financial crimes, recorded confessions, and the video that would end Adrien's ambitions permanently. If they could just get it in front of the families before Adrien put a bullet in him. The tactical preparation was easy. The emotional preparation was impossible. That evening, Aaron sat in the nursery with his phone propped on the dresser, recording. Pearl slept in her bassinet, peaceful and oblivious. He'd changed her diaper for once without YouTube's help. Small victories. Hey Pearl, he started, his voice rough. It's your dad. If you're watching this, it means I didn't come home. And I need you to know some things. He paused, gathering words he'd never been good at. Your mother is the strongest, smartest, most fearless woman I've ever met. When I tried to push her away to keep her safe, she survived anyway. She built a life for you when I wasn't there. She gathered evidence against one of the most dangerous men in Chicago while protecting you. That's courage, baby girl. Real courage, not the kind that comes from a gun. His throat tightened. I spent my whole life believing violence was strength. That fear was respect. That love made you weak. Your mother taught me different. You taught me different. Love doesn't make you weak, it makes you willing to fight for something bigger than yourself. Tears blurred his vision. I made a lot of mistakes, hurt people, did things I can't take back. But you're my chance to be better, to build something clean out of all this dirt. So whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know. You are loved, completely, unconditionally. And I'm sorry I won't be there to tell you every day. He wiped his eyes roughly. Be better than me, Pearl. Be better than all of us. From the doorway, Tiffany's quiet sob made him look up. She stood there in one of his shirts, tears streaming down her face. And Aaron ended the recording. Don't, she whispered. Don't say goodbye like that. Tiffany. No. She crossed to him, pulling him up from the chair. You're coming back. You're coming back because I didn't survive 3 years alone just to lose you now. Because Pearl needs her father. Because Her voice broke. Because I love you, Aaron Sanchez. And I never stopped. And you don't get to leave us. He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, pouring every unsaid word into the contact. She kissed back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt like she could hold him there through sheer will. They stumbled to his bedroom, shedding clothes between kisses. The lovemaking was raw, passionate, desperate, both a beginning and an ending, a promise and a farewell. Tiffany cried as they moved together, and Adrien kissed away her tears, memorizing every sound she made, every place his hands knew by heart. Afterward, she lay against his chest, her fingers tracing the bullet scar on his shoulder. "Promise me," she whispered into the darkness. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," Adrien said, knowing some promises were made to be broken, but needing to give her this one anyway. "I'll come back to you, both of you, I swear." She fell asleep eventually, exhausted from fear and tears. Adrien lay awake, listening to her breathing sync with Pearl's through the baby monitor, 2 heartbeats that had become his entire world. "I'll come back," he whispered again, to himself or to them or to whatever deity might be listening. "Or I'll die trying." Dawn came too fast and too slow simultaneously. Adrien showered, shaved, pulled on his most expensive suit, black Armani, custom-tailored, armor for a different kind of battle. The fabric whispered power and death in equal measure. He found Tiffany in the nursery, holding Pearl, both of them awake too early. The morning light caught them like a painting, mother and daughter, everything worth fighting for. "Let me," Adrien said softly, taking Pearl. The baby looked up at him with those knowing dark eyes, and her tiny hand reached out, wrapping around his finger with that impossible strength, and wouldn't let go. Adrien tried gently to free himself, but Pearl's grip tightened, her face scrunching like she understood what today meant, like she was trying to keep him there through sheer baby determination. "Pearl, baby, I have to," his voice cracked. The lump in his throat made breathing difficult. This tiny human, barely 3 months old, holding onto him like he was her whole world, because he was. Because despite everything, the violence, the blood, the empire, built on suffering, he was her father, and she trusted him completely. "I'll come back," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "I promise, baby girl. Daddy's coming back." He finally freed his finger, handed Pearl to Tiffany, and nearly broke at the sight of them together, his family, his reason, his redemption. Tiffany walked him to the door, Pearl on her hip. "When this is over," Adrien said, cupping her face, "we leave. New city, new name, new life. We give Pearl something that doesn't involve bulletproof cribs and armed guards. Somewhere she can be normal, safe, happy. Somewhere you can be happy too," Tiffany added. Adrien kissed them both one last time, Tiffany's lips, Pearl's soft cheek, and walked out into the Chicago morning. Behind him, Pearl started crying, like she knew her father was walking into war, and Adrien kept walking, because sometimes love meant walking toward the bullets instead of away from them. The Vanguard's grand ballroom glittered with deadly elegance, crystal chandeliers casting light on men who'd built empires on suffering. Every major family had sent representatives, drawn by the promise of blood or the threat of being left out of history. Adrien stood near the entrance, Miguel at his shoulder, counting exits and calculating odds that didn't favor survival. Adrien made his entrance like royalty descending from heaven. 20 men flanked him, armed and loyal, their suits unable to hide the weapons underneath. He smiled that charming, vicious smile that had convinced dozens of people to trust him right before he destroyed them. "Brother," Adrien called across the ballroom, his voice carrying, "so good of you to come. I was worried you'd hide behind that traitor and her bastard." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Adrien. "Careful, Adrien," Adrien said quietly. "You're talking about my daughter." "Your daughter?" Adrien laughed, playing to the crowd. "You mean the accident that woman trapped you with? My brother chose a whore and a mistake over his family. He's forgotten where real power comes from." He spread his arms, addressing the assembled families. "Adrien Sanchez has gone soft, sentimental. He protects the woman who's been gathering evidence to destroy us all. The question is, do we follow weakness, or do we follow strength?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adrien's supporters nodded. Others looked uncertain, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Adrien waited. Let Adrien have his moment. Let him think he'd won. "You done?" Adrien asked. Adrien's smile widened. "Oh, I'm just getting..." Every screen in the ballroom flickered to life. The AV system hijacked, just as Jonah had promised. Adrien's face appeared younger, 3 years ago, holding a small vial in Victor Romano's study. "This is Digitalis," Adrien's recorded voice said. Untraceable. He'll be gone by midnight. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, the scrape of chairs as people stood. The video continued Adrien slipping poison into Victor's drink, watching him collapse, making the call to stage it as natural causes. Then financial records scrolled across every screen. 17 million embezzled. Shell companies, offshore accounts, all in Adrien's name. That's fabricated, Adrien shouted, but his face had gone pale. She made this up. The woman is a liar. The woman is a forensic accountant, Aaron said calmly, and she's very, very good at her job. Adrien's supporters were already backing away, reassessing their loyalties with the speed of rats fleeing a sinking ship. Camila stepped forward from the crowd, her people moving with her, guns suddenly very visible. He took our money, Camila said coldly. He ended our boss, and he tried to start a war to cover his crimes. I say we end this, now. Adrien's hand went to his gun. Everything happened in slow motion and too fast simultaneously. Adrien drew, aiming for Aaron's chest. Camila threw herself between them. The shot cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. Camila fell, blood blooming across her white blouse. End this, she whispered, as Aaron caught her. End him. The ballroom exploded into chaos. Adrien's remaining loyalists drew weapons. Aaron's people returned fire. The crystal chandeliers shattered, raining glass like deadly snow. But Aaron only had eyes for his brother. He launched himself at Adrien, tackling him through a table that splintered under their combined weight. They fought like animals, no finesse, no strategy, just raw fury and years of resentment given physical form. Adrien landed a punch that split Aaron's lip. You abandoned us, chose outsiders over blood. Aaron drove his fist into Adrien's ribs. You ended our boss, stole from our family. They crashed through another table, chairs, champagne flutes exploding. Adrien grabbed a broken bottle, swinging wildly. Aaron caught his wrist, twisted, heard bones crack. The bottle fell. You went soft, Adrien screamed, blood pouring from his nose. Love made you weak. Aaron pinned him down, knee on his chest, fist raised. I didn't go soft, he rasped, breathing hard. I finally learned what's worth fighting for. The room had gone quiet, guns trained on both of them, waiting for the outcome. The syndicate leaders watched, their faces carved from stone. Romano's son, the new head of that family, stepped forward. The evidence is clear. Adrien Sanchez murdered my father and stole from all of us. The old laws demand justice. Blood for blood. Others nodded. Adrien's fate was sealed. Aaron stood, looking down at his brother, bloodied, broken, terrified in a way he'd never been before. One word from Aaron, and Adrien would be gone. Permanently. Justice served. Problem solved. Exile, Aaron said. The room erupted in protests. Adrien stared up in shock. Exile, Aaron repeated, louder. Strip him of his name, his wealth, his connections. He leaves Chicago tonight and never comes back. He tries to return. He meets the consequences. He looked at the assembled families. I won't become him. I won't let his poison make me into something my daughter would be ashamed of. The syndicate leaders exchanged glances. Finally, Romano's son nodded. Exile. But if he returns, his life is forfeit. Aaron looked down at Adrien one last time. You're dead to me, but I won't carry your blood on my hands for the rest of my life. Get out of my city. Adrien stumbled to his feet, held up by two of Romano's men. As they dragged him toward the exit, he spat blood and venom. This isn't over, brother. Yes, Aaron said quietly. It is. 6 months after the summit, Aaron Sanchez no longer existed. The man now known as George Hayes lived in a modest coastal town 3 hours north of San Francisco, where the biggest crime was teenagers spray painting the pier, and the local newspaper reported on bake sales with the seriousness Chicago reserved for gang wars. He ran a legitimate security consulting firm from a small office downtown, advising small businesses on alarm systems and insurance policies, work that bored him senseless and made him happier than he'd ever been. Tiffany, now Tiffany Hayes, complete with a wedding ring that had cost a fraction of what Aaron would have spent in his old life, worked remotely as a forensic accountant for nonprofits. She'd traded tracking cartel money for helping homeless shelters balance their budgets, and she'd never felt more useful. Their home was a sunny 2-bedroom cottage with a yard, a white picket fence, and not a single bulletproof window. It was perfect. Pearl, now 10 months old and determined to conquer the world one wobbly step at a time, stood in the living room clutching the coffee table. Aaron sat 5 feet away, arms outstretched, encouraging. Come on, baby girl, you can do it. Pearl's face scrunched with concentration. She let go of the table, wobbled dangerously, and took one step, then two, then three before gravity won and Aaron caught her, laughing with a lightness Tiffany had never heard from him. Did you see that? Aaron called toward the kitchen. She walked. Tiffany, she walked. Tiffany stood in the doorway, flour on her hands from attempting to bake cookies, another suburban skill she was hilariously bad at, and tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that they'd actually made it out. They'd survived Chicago, survived Adrien, survived the violence that should have consumed them. They were free. That evening, they put Pearl to bed together, a routine that still felt miraculous in its normalcy. Aaron sang the Spanish lullaby that always worked, his voice soft in the dim nursery. Tiffany stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, and together they watched their daughter drift into sleep. My mother used to say something, Aaron whispered as they tiptoed out. Real power isn't taking what you want. It's protecting what you love. He turned to Tiffany, pulling her close. I spent 34 years misunderstanding that. Thought power was fear, control, taking before someone took from you. And now? He kissed her forehead. Now I understand. This you, Pearl. This ridiculous house with the leaky faucet I can't figure out. This is power. Real power. The kind worth dying for. They stood on the porch as the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in colors that didn't exist in Chicago. Pearl slept on Aaron's shoulder, her tiny hand fisted in his shirt. Tiffany's hand found his, fingers intertwining. Aaron Sanchez had built an empire on broken bones and fear. George Hayes built his kingdom on bedtime stories and morning pancakes. One had made him rich. The other had made him human. No regrets? Tiffany asked softly. Only one, Aaron said. That it took me so long to figure out what mattered. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility. Pearl stirred, sighed, settled back into sleep against her father's chest. Somewhere behind them, dinner was probably burning. Tiffany had left something in the oven. Tomorrow, Aaron had 3 security consultations scheduled, all legitimate, all boring, all perfect. This was redemption. This was peace. Down the street, hidden in the gathering darkness, a black sedan idled. Inside, a phone glowed, Adrien's voice thin and bitter across the distance. I found them, the coastal town, just like you said. Do I have the green light? A pause. Then, not yet. Let them think they're safe. Let them get comfortable. Then we move. The car's engine started. Drove slowly past the Hayes residence one more time. Aaron didn't notice. Too busy whispering something to Tiffany that made her laugh. Adrien ended the call, his scarred hands gripping the steering wheel. Exile hadn't broken him. It had sharpened him, made him patient, focused. His brother thought love made him strong. Adrien would teach him different, because in their world, peace was never permanent. Happiness was always borrowed, never owned. And blood debts, those lasted forever. But for tonight, in their sunny coastal cottage, Aaron held his daughter and kissed his wife and believed in happy endings. And maybe that belief, fragile and foolish as it was, counted for something after all. Maybe love wasn't about permanence. Maybe it was about choosing to fight for each moment, knowing tomorrow might bring war, but today brought this. A baby's sleeping breath, a woman's hand in yours, and the weight of love so much heavier and more beautiful than any crown. The sun disappeared beneath the horizon. Stars emerged. And the Hayes family went inside, locking the door against the darkness, building their fortress one bedtime story at a time. If you loved Aaron, Tiffany, and Pearl's story, hit that like button and please subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you.